I was completely wrong about my CEO. My name is Elena Hayes, and for almost 2 years, I believed my CEO was the kind of man companies warned people about in private, but praised in public. His name was Marcus Vail. On stage, he looked perfect. Tailored navy suits, calm voice, warm smile. The kind of smile that made investors relax and employees clap before they even knew why they were clapping. But inside the company, at least from where I sat, he looked cold. He fired people without explanation. He shut down departments with one email. He canceled bonuses after our best quarter. And whenever someone questioned him, he didn't argue. He just stared at them quietly, as if their pain was nothing more than background noise. I worked in operations at Vailcore Systems, a logistics software company that had grown too fast and broken too many people along the way. My job was to analyze internal workflows, vendor contracts, cost reports, and performance problems. In plain language, I saw the damage before everyone else did. And what I saw made me hate Marcus Vail. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deeply, quietly. The way you hate someone powerful when you know you cannot touch them. The first time I truly turned against him was on a Tuesday morning in November. We had an all-hands meeting. Everyone expected good news. The company had just closed a massive government logistics contract worth nearly $600 million over 5 years. People were exhausted but excited. We had worked nights, weekends, holidays. Some people had missed birthdays, anniversaries, even hospital visits. So when Marcus walked onto the stage, we expected him to say thank you, maybe announce bonuses, maybe give us one moment where the sacrifice felt worth it. Instead, he looked out over the room and said, "There will be no performance bonuses this year." The room went completely still. Then he continued, "We are entering a defensive financial period. Cash preservation is necessary." That was all. No apology, no explanation that made sense. Just polished corporate language covering a knife wound. Behind me, I heard someone whisper, "But we just landed $600 million. Another person laughed bitterly. I didn't laugh. I stared at Marcus on stage, and in that moment, I decided exactly what kind of man he was. A liar, a thief, a man who would squeeze workers dry and call it strategy. 2 weeks later, the layoffs began. Not massive layoffs, worse, selective layoffs, quiet ones. People disappeared one department at a time. A senior engineer named Priya, who had built half our routing engine, was gone by Friday. A finance analyst named Jordan, who had questioned unusual vendor payments, disappeared the next Monday. Then 2 compliance officers. Then 3 people from procurement. Every time, the official reason was the same: organizational restructuring. But I noticed the pattern. Everyone being removed had touched one of 3 things: vendor contracts, government compliance, or budget irregularities. That was when I started collecting evidence. Not because I had a plan, because I was angry. And angry people collect things they don't yet know how to use. I saved reports, screenshots, old vendor invoices, internal emails, meeting notes, expense approvals, anything that made Marcus look guilty. And there was plenty. There were payments to shell-like consulting firms, emergency contracts approved without normal bidding, missing documentation, delayed audits. And one vendor in particular kept appearing everywhere: Northbridge Strategic Solutions. They had no real website, no clear staff list, no public client history, but they had received over $18 million from Vailcore in 14 months. The approvals all traced upward, not directly to Marcus. He was too careful for that, but close enough. close enough for me to feel sick, close enough for me to believe I had finally found the truth. My CEO wasn't just greedy. He was using the company like a machine to move money. And the layoffs? They weren't cost-saving. They were cleanup. He was removing anyone close enough to ask the wrong questions. For 3 months, I worked like a ghost inside the company. By day, I smiled in meetings. By night, I built a private folder on an encrypted drive. I called it Veil Evidence. Every document I saved made me feel stronger. Every invoice made me angrier. Every contradiction made me more certain. Then one evening, I found the email that changed everything. At first, I thought it proved Marcus was guilty. Later, I realized it proved something else entirely. The email came from an archived legal folder I should not have had access to, but someone had misconfigured permissions during a system migration. The subject line was, "Do not escalate. Executive review only." It contained a memo from outside counsel. One sentence hit me so hard I read it 5 times. Exposure risk remains significant if employees become aware that contract reserves have been diverted. Diverted. There it was. The word every whistleblower dreams of finding. I printed it. I saved it. I copied it twice. Then I sat alone in my apartment at 1:17 a.m., shaking with rage. The next morning, I decided I would bring him down. I didn't go to HR. HR protected the company. I didn't go to the board. I believed the board already knew. I went to someone outside, a business journalist named Dana Wells. Dana had built her career exposing corporate fraud. I sent her one anonymous message. I have evidence that Veil Core Systems is diverting contract funds while laying off employees. She replied 14 minutes later. Can you prove it? I stared at the screen. Then I typed, yes. That was the first mistake. The second mistake was trusting my anger more than my judgment. Over the next week, Dana and I exchanged messages through an encrypted platform. I sent her selected documents, invoices, memos, approval chains, the Northbridge payment history, the contract reserves diverted memo. She became very interested very quickly. Then she asked one question I should have taken more seriously. Why do you think the CEO is behind this? I replied, because nothing this large happens without him. That sentence would haunt me later, because it sounded logical, it sounded strong, it sounded obvious. And it was completely wrong. 3 days later, Dana told me she was preparing a story. Not immediately, she needed more verification, but soon. I felt terrified and powerful at the same time. For the first time since joining Veil Core, I believed someone like Marcus Veil could actually fall. Then, on Thursday afternoon, I received a calendar invitation from Marcus Veil. Subject, private discussion, 6:30 p.m. Location, executive conference room. No agenda, no explanation. Just my name and his. I nearly dropped my phone. For 1 full minute, I could not breathe. He knew. Somehow, he knew. At 6:26 p.m., I stood outside the executive conference room with my hand on the door handle, rehearsing my face. Calm, confused, professional, innocent. When I entered, Marcus was alone. No lawyers, no HR, no security. Just him, sitting at the far end of a long glass table. He looked older up close, more tired, less polished. There were folders in front of him, but he did not touch them. "Sit down, Elena," he said. I sat. He studied me quietly. Then he said something I did not expect. "You've been looking at Northbridge." My stomach turned cold. I said nothing. He leaned back. "You also accessed a legal memo last Tuesday night." Still, I said nothing. His voice remained calm. "I need to know who you sent it to." That was when my fear turned into anger, because guilty men ask that question, not innocent ones. I looked him directly in the eye and said, "Why? So you can bury it before anyone finds out?" For the first time, his expression changed. Not anger, not surprise. Pain. Actual pain. Then he said quietly, "Elena, if you sent that memo without the rest of the file, you may have just put several people in danger." I almost laughed. It sounded so manipulative, so theatrical. "People are already in danger," I said. "You fired them." He closed his eyes for half a second. Then he opened one of the folders and slid a photograph across the table. It showed Priya, the engineer who had been laid off. Except she wasn't in an unemployment line. She was standing outside a federal courthouse, beside two men I did not recognize. Marcus slid another photo. Jordan from finance, then the compliance officers, then procurement. Every person I thought he had fired. Every person I thought he had erased. They were all connected to something I did not understand. "What is this?" I asked. Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached for a remote and turned on the wall screen. A document appeared. At the top were 3 words: Protected Witness Program. My chest tightened. Marcus said, "They weren't fired. They were removed." I stared at him. What? They were placed on paid leave under sealed legal protection. Their employment records were altered internally because we had evidence someone inside Veilcore was tracking every person who touched Northbridge. My mind rejected it. "No," I whispered. He clicked again. The screen changed to a timeline. Vendor anomalies, compliance alerts, employee threats, system access breaches, anonymous messages. Then the line near the bottom. Attempted vehicle tampering. Priya Desai, October 18th. My mouth went dry. Marcus looked at me. Priya didn't resign because she questioned invoices. She was almost killed after identifying a hidden routing backdoor in our government contract system. The murder continued. He began asking about payments. He discovered that Northbridge wasn't stealing money from us. Northbridge was the shell being used to catch the people stealing from us. I blinked. Once. Twice. "That doesn't make sense," I said. "I know. You paid them $18 million. "Yes." "So they were real?" "No," he said. "They were bait." The word landed like a stone in water. Bait. Marcus continued slowly, as if he knew each sentence would break another piece of my certainty. 16 months ago, we discovered that someone inside Veilcore was manipulating government contract reserve accounts. The theft wasn't simple. It was hidden inside compliance reclassification, emergency vendor routing, and delayed performance liabilities. He pointed to the screen. Northbridge was created with federal investigators to trace who approved false transfers, who edited the audit logs, and who tried to move the money once they thought it was safe. I could barely hear him over the pounding in my ears. "And the bonuses?" I asked. His face hardened, but not with cruelty, with memory. The bonuses were frozen because we couldn't move large employee payments while the reserve accounts were under active monitoring. Any abnormal transfer could have triggered the suspects to destroy evidence. I shook my head. You let everyone hate you. Yes. You let people think you were stealing from them. Yes. Why? Marcus looked down at the folder. Then he said, because the person stealing from them was sitting on my executive committee. That was the first twist, but not the last. He clicked again. A photo appeared on the screen. I recognized the woman instantly. Claudia Mercer, Chief Financial Officer. Elegant, sharp, beloved by employees. The person everyone trusted because she seemed warm in ways Marcus never did. She remembered birthdays. She asked about children. She brought soup when someone was sick. She was the person people went to when Marcus made hard decisions. And I had sent her 3 internal complaints in the last year. Complaints about Marcus, complaints about bonuses, complaints about suspicious payments. My hands went cold. Marcus saw my face. Yes, he said. Claudia. I whispered, no. She built the diversion structure. She approved the vendor layering. She planted language in legal summaries. And she made sure every suspicious path looked like it ended with me. My mind flashed through months of conversations. Claudia sighing sadly in the elevator. I wish Marcus cared more. Claudia touching my arm after the bonus meeting. Some leaders forget who builds the company. Claudia telling me not to push too hard. Power protects power, Elena. I had thought she was warning me. She had been guiding me. Turning my anger into a weapon against the wrong man. Marcus said, we believe Claudia has been feeding selected information to journalists through internal employees. I stopped breathing. His eyes stayed on mine. She doesn't leak herself. She finds someone honest, someone angry, someone with enough access to sound credible. The silence in the room became unbearable. I whispered, you think that's me? No, he said. I know that's you. I should have defended myself, denied it, asked for a lawyer. Instead, I just sat there, because every word he said had found the hidden part of me that already knew. I had been used. My righteous anger had made me blind. Then Marcus said the sentence that destroyed me. Elena, did you send Dana Wells the legal memo? My head snapped up. He knew her name. How do you? She contacted our communications office 39 minutes ago for comment. My stomach dropped. She's publishing? Tomorrow morning, he said. Unless we stop it. I stood up so fast the chair scraped behind me. I'll call her. Marcus stood too. No, you won't. Why not? Because your accounts may be monitored. By Claudia? We believe so. The room grew colder. Marcus walked to the window overlooking the city. For months, we needed Claudia to think the investigation was failing. We needed her to think I was isolated, hated, distrusted, the Vignan adult of the story. He turned back. And now, because of the documents you sent, she may know the federal structure around Northbridge is real. I covered my mouth with one hand. All the certainty I had carried for months began collapsing inside me. What happens if she knows? Marcus's voice lowered. She runs. Top phone rang. He looking at the screen. His expression changed. Not much, but enough. He answered, listened, then said only, "When?" A pairs. Lock down external transfers. Do not alert Mercer. He opening the call. "I across Claudia?" I asked. Marcus nodded. She just initiated a $42 million transfer through a dormant overseas vendor account. My ways weakened. She knows. Or she's afraid. What do we do? He looked at me for a long second, then yelled, "Now you decide which side of the truth you're on." That was the moment everything changed. Not because I suddenly adored him, not yet, but because I finally saw him clearly enough to realize I had not seen him at all. Marcus opened his laptop and turned it toward me. "I need you to help us prove Claudia triggered the transfer because of the leak, not because the investigation forced it." "Why me?" "Because she trusts your anger." The words hurt because they were true. He continued, "If Claudia believes you still think I'm guilty, she may contact you." I stared at him. "You want me to be bait?" "No," he said. "I want you to choose." That answer surprised me more than anything else. A guilty CEO would have commanded. A coward would have threatened. Marcus Vale gave me a choice. And somehow that made me feel worse. Because for months I had believed I was brave. But real bravery had just walked into the room, wearing the face of the man I hated. I sat back down. "What do you need me to do?" Marcus did not smile. He simply nodded. Within 20 minutes, federal investigators joined the call from a secure line. I was told what I could say, what I could not say, and what would happen if Claudia reached out. At 8:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. A message from Claudia. "Are you alone?" My hands trembled. Marcus stood across the room, silent. An investigator on the speaker said, "Reply naturally." I typed, "Yes. Why?" Claudia replied, "Did you send anything outside?" I looked at Marcus. He gave no expression. I typed, "Maybe. I'm scared. Marcus knows." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again, then, "Listen carefully. Marcus is going to blame you. I can help, but you need to meet me tonight. No office, no calls." My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. The investigator whispered, "Ask where." I typed, "Where?" Claudia sent an address. A private airport hangar outside the city. Then, "Bring anything you saved, especially the memo. If you want protection, I need everything." I stared at those words. If I had received that message yesterday, I would have gone. I would have handed her everything. I would have believed she was saving me. That realization made me sick. Marcus looked at the message and said quietly, "She's not going to protect you." I looked up. What was she going to do? He didn't answer immediately. That silence told me enough. At 10:02 p.m., Claudia Mercer arrived at the private hangar with 2 phones, a passport, and a hard drive hidden inside the lining of her coat. I was not there. Federal agents were. By midnight, Claudia was in custody. By morning, Dana Wells did not publish the story accusing Marcus Vale. Instead, she published something very different 3 days later. The headline read, Vailcore CFO arrested in $92 million contract diversion scheme after federal sting. The article mentioned Northbridge. It mentioned false reserves. It mentioned executive manipulation. It mentioned protected witnesses. It did not mention me. Marcus made sure of that. He could have destroyed me. He could have fired me publicly. He could have blamed me for almost ruining the investigation. He could have made me the example. The angry employee who leaked sealed documents and nearly allowed a criminal to escape. Instead, he called me into his office 1 week later. I expected punishment. I deserved punishment. I walked in ready to resign. Marcus was standing by his desk, holding a folder. "Elena," he said, "close the door." I did. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then I said the words I had rehearsed for days. "I was wrong about you." He didn't respond, so I continued. "I was completely wrong. I judged you without knowing what you were carrying. I thought your silence was arrogance. I thought your distance was guilt. I thought every hard decision was cruelty." My voice broke. "And I almost helped the person who was hurting everyone." Marcus looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You were angry for the right reasons." That made me feel worse, not better. "Not in the right direction," I said. "No," he said, "but for the right reasons." He handed me the folder. Inside was a formal notice. I braced myself. But it wasn't a termination letter. It was a promotion. Director of Internal Integrity and Operational Risk. I looked up, stunned. "I don't understand." Marcus sat down slowly. "You saw patterns most people ignored. You asked questions most people were afraid to ask. Your mistake wasn't that you cared. Your mistake was that you concluded before you verified." I swallowed hard. Why would you trust me after what I did? He looked tired again, but this time I observe who never make mistakes are usually hiding them. People who face their mistakes can become dangerous in the right way. I stared at the paper. Then the added, "And because next time, I want you inside the room before your anger chooses the wrong target." That was the moment I began to respect Marcus Vail. Not because he was perfect, he wasn't. He was secretive, difficult, sometimes too cold. But now I knew why. For over a year, he had allowed thousands of employees to believe he was selfish, dishonest, and heartless, because telling the truth too soon would have destroyed the people helping expose the crime. He carried hatred that did not belong to him. He absorbed blame to protect witnesses. He froze bonuses to preserve evidence. He watched trusted employees turn against him and said nothing, because silence was the price of catching the real thief. But the final twist came 2 months later, at another all-hands meeting. The same stage, the same lights, the same employees who had once stared at him with resentment. Marcus walked out slowly. This time, he did not look polished. He looked human. He stood at the microphone and said, "I owe every person in this company the truth." The room went silent. He explained what he legally could. Not everything, but enough. He told us the bonus freeze had been part of a federal financial hold. He told us the laid-off employees had been protected. He told us the company had recovered most of the stolen money. Then he paused and said, The bonuses you earned were never canceled. A murmur moved through the room. Marcus continued. They were delayed, and because they were delayed, they will be paid with interest. For 1 second, no one moved. Then people began crying, actually crying, not because of money alone, because the story they had believed for months had just been rewritten in front of them. Marcus looked out at us and said, "You deserved the truth sooner. I couldn't give it to you, but you still deserved it." Then he did something I never expected. He stepped away from the microphone and bowed his head. Not like a performer, like a man asking forgiveness without demanding it. The applause began slowly, then grew, then became overwhelming. I stood in the back of the room, unable to move, because I remembered how much I had hated him, how certain I had been, how proudly wrong. And then Marcus looked toward the back, found me in the crowd, and gave one small nod. Not gratitude, not victory, recognition. That I knew, that I finally understood. 6 months later, Priya returned to the company. Jordan, too. The compliance officers came back with new authority. Claudia Mercer pleaded guilty to multiple charges. The board was restructured. The government contract survived. And Vailcore changed. Not overnight, not magically, but truly. The company became more transparent. Internal reporting became independent. Executive approvals required outside review. And the bonus policy was rewritten so no CEO could ever freeze employee compensation without board-level documented cause. As for me, I kept the promotion. But on my first day in the new role, I renamed the private folder on my encrypted drive. It was no longer called Veil Evidence. I changed it to Verify Before You Destroy. Because that was the lesson that nearly cost me everything. Sometimes the person who looks guilty is carrying the burden of silence. Sometimes the person who comforts you is the one sharpening the knife. And sometimes the villain in your story is only standing in the shadows because he is protecting people who cannot survive in the light yet. I was completely wrong about my CEO. I thought he was dishonest. I thought he was evil. I thought he had betrayed all of us. But after what happened, I didn't just respect Marcus Vail. I adored the kind of strength he had. Not loud strength, not selfish strength, not the kind that demands applause, the rare kind. The kind that lets people misunderstand you while you quietly protect them anyway. And that is why I will never again confuse silence with guilt, or kindness with innocence, or anger with truth.
Select now another video in our series of family and company dramas. They are all powerful stories of people coming back stronger after they have been humiliated or hurt by family members or their management. Always make sure you stay strong. Let nobody ever tell you what you are worth. You know the best. Of course.